Most people who lose everything financially never saw it coming. Not because they weren't paying attention, because they were looking at the wrong thing. You pay your bills, you have savings, you're not reckless, you don't live paycheck to paycheck. And when someone asks whether you feel financially secure, the honest answer is yes, because you do. That feeling isn't wrong, but it might not be real. There's a difference between a house that looks structurally sound and one that actually is. From the street you can't tell. The paint is the same, the windows sit straight, the lawn is clean, but inside there are walls that look purely decorative that are actually load-bearing. Remove one without knowing it and the ceiling doesn't fall right away. It holds for a while, everything looks exactly the same, until the first serious weight presses down. 7 signs exist that separate genuinely financially secure people from people who simply feel that way. Not 7 tips, not 7 habits to build. 7 diagnostic markers you can evaluate right now, in your actual financial situation, that reveal whether your structure can hold real weight, or whether it's only been holding because nothing heavy has pressed on it yet. The first 3 deal with the architecture of your protection plan, the parts most people skip because they look at the balance, not the load. The next 2 involve what I call your coverage shadow, quiet gaps that exist in almost every American household, but go unexamined because they feel uncomfortable to name. The last 2 are behavioral. The way truly financially secure people interact with uncertainty versus the way people who merely feel secure respond to it. How you're responding to this right now is one of them. Stay with me. Sign 1, your emergency fund is actually liquid, and you know exactly how fast it moves. Most people count a savings balance as their financial safety net. That's reasonable. But here's what rarely gets asked. Can that account be accessed within 24 hours, without a penalty, without a bank hold, without triggering a CD term or an investment product that fluctuates with the market? Real financial security requires not just that the money exists, but that it moves when you need it. There's a difference between money that is technically yours and money that is operationally available under pressure. Every hour that separates a crisis from accessible funds is time during which the wrong decision gets made. If you've never actually tested the mechanics, not just assume they work, you don't yet know whether that wall is load-bearing or decorative. Sign 2, your financial safety net is inflation-adjusted, not just dollar-denominated. Here is a quiet erosion that affects almost everyone who has done the right thing. You saved 3 months of expenses in 2021. In dollar terms, that number is still there. In purchasing power, it has declined potentially 15 to 25%, depending on your specific expense categories. Capital preservation isn't only about protecting the principal, it's about protecting the value. A safety reserve correctly sized 3 years ago may be structurally undersized today, not because you spent it, but because what it was designed to cover became more expensive while the number sat still. Genuinely financially secure people don't just check their balance. They check whether that balance still covers what it was built to cover. Sign 3, and this is the one most financial conversations skip entirely. Your financial structure can absorb simultaneous shocks, not just sequential ones. Most emergency funds are designed for one problem at a time. A job loss, a medical event, a car repair, but real emergencies rarely arrive alone. Job loss frequently coincides with increased healthcare costs. A market correction tends to arrive with the kind of broader economic pressure that affects multiple areas of a household at once. The question that reveals whether your financial security is real or felt isn't, could I handle a job loss? It's, could I handle a job loss at the same time my car needed a major repair and my portfolio was down 20%? If the honest answer creates a pause, that pause is information. Wealth protection isn't about surviving the emergency you planned for. It's about surviving the one you didn't. This is where financial security stops being a number question and becomes a structure question. Because the 4th and 5th signs aren't about what you have. They're about what's quietly exposed. Sign 4, you know the exact gaps in your coverage, not whether you have insurance, but what it doesn't cover. Disability protection is the most commonly undersized piece of the American household financial plan. Most people either carry no coverage or rely on employer-provided plans that pay 60% of base salary, and most don't know what happens to that protection if they change jobs, take an extended leave, or work for a company that restructures. Long-term disability is the event statistically most likely to disrupt household financial stability. And it's the one most likely to be assumed rather than verified. Your coverage shadow is the distance between what you believe you're protected against and what you're actually protected against. For most households, that distance is larger than it appears from the outside. Sign 5, your financial safety net doesn't depend on a single income stream continuing without interruption. This isn't about passive income in the aspirational sense, it's structural. If the primary income in your household paused for 6 months, not permanently just paused, what happens mechanically? Which obligations continue? Which flex? Which create cascading pressure on everything else? Genuinely financially secure people have thought through that sequence. They know the answer, not because they're pessimistic, but because knowing the answer is how you confirm the structure holds. If the question creates genuine uncertainty, that uncertainty is a signal pointing directly at something worth addressing. Now the two signs that most financial content never gets close to. And both of them are already visible in how you're engaging with what you're hearing. Sign 6, you can sit with a question about financial risk without it triggering defensive certainty. There's a consistent pattern in people whose financial security is more feeling than architecture. When they encounter information that might reveal a gap, they instinctively resolve it toward reassurance. I have an emergency fund, so I'm probably fine. I've been careful, so this probably doesn't apply to me. That impulse toward comfort is natural. It's also the quiet enemy of structural clarity. Genuinely financially secure people can hold an uncomfortable question without immediately closing it. They don't need the answer to be okay, they need the accurate answer. And if accuracy reveals a gap, they treat the gap as information rather than threat. Real risk management at the personal level isn't about being fearless. It's about being honest faster than most people are willing to be. Sign 7 is the most revealing of all. Genuinely financially secure people review their financial structure on a schedule, not when something goes wrong but before. A recurring date on the calendar, a defined set of questions they return to, a process for checking whether the load-bearing walls are still in place. Not because they're anxious, because they've learned what takes most people a crisis to understand. Financial security isn't a state you arrive at, it's a structure you maintain. And structures require inspection. The gap between people who feel financially secure and people who actually are isn't resources. It's verification. Here's the truth this entire video has been building toward. The feeling of financial security and the reality of it are both invisible under normal conditions. When nothing is pressing, bills paid, savings account showing a real number, no catastrophe in sight, you cannot feel the difference between a load-bearing wall and a decorative one. You can only find out by looking. Every one of these 7 signs is accessible today in your actual situation with what you have right now. You don't need a perfect score. You need to know which ones have gaps, because a gap you've named is a gap you can close. The ones that quietly dismantle financial stability are always the ones that stayed unnamed until something heavy pressed down on them. True financial security doesn't require a large number. It requires knowing your structure, where it holds, where it needs attention, and what it would take to reinforce the places that matter most. One last thing. Every structure looks fine from the outside. Every one. The load-bearing walls are invisible precisely because they're inside. You only know they're there if someone has looked. You just looked. If anything in these 7 signs created a specific question, a number you haven't verified, a gap you assumed rather than confirmed, a structure you've been meaning to revisit, that question was already waiting before this video started. You just gave it a name. And that's worth more than any financial advice that only tells you what you already believed.